Hi, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are joining us from in the world today. My name is Meg. I am from Power to Fly, and I am so excited to get to host another fabulous Chat and Learn event. Now, before we dive in and I introduce you to our speaker, I just want to go over a couple real quick housekeeping items. This might be especially helpful if maybe this is your first Power to Fly event, in which case, welcome. We're so happy to meet you. Or maybe this is your maybe 50th, 500th Power to Fly event, but maybe you haven't joined us in a while. So the biggest thing to know about all of our virtual events is that they are about you. They're about our community members and making sure that we bring valuable content to you. So the fact that you took time out of your day to be here with us for our recording and our live stream means that you get prime treatment. If you want to participate, we want to encourage it. So you can do this in a couple different ways. You can turn your cameras off, turn your cameras on if you would like to share your smiling, maskless faces with us safely. No pressure to be Insta perfect, y'all. I'm on day 3 or 4 of the dry shampoo messy bun combo. So whether you are coming to us from a corner office or your living room couch, makes no difference. We want to meet you where you are. Now, if you do come off mute at any point during today's session, you will show up on the recording as well as the live stream. So if you have any kind of privacy concerns or anything like that, totally understood. Just know that even if you do turn your camera on, you will not show up as long as you don't come off mute. Now, if you want to participate in a different or additional ways, you are also always welcome and encouraged to put questions or comments into the group chat. Now, if you have a question or a comment that you would like me to raise, you want to be kept anonymous, not a problem. Just DM it to me. You'll find my name, Meg Alexander, on the drop-down menu in your Zoom chat box. Now, like I said, today's session is being live streamed to our website and our YouTube channel. And we will also be posting the recording of today's session. Now, what this means for you is that you don't have to take notes. You get to sit back, relax, enjoy the information that Maya is going to share with us today. And you don't have to worry about if you missed a link that someone shared or a resource that someone listed. No worries, you can always go back and rewatch the recording. Now, everybody who registered, whether you joined us or not, whether you stay for 5 minutes, the full 60, jump in and out, doesn't matter. Everybody that signed up for today's session is going to get an email from Power to Fly, probably about Friday, and it'll have a link to where you can rewatch this recording once it's posted on our website on powertofly.com. Now, the good news or the better news here is that if Maya says something just completely amazing, unbelievable, mind-blowing, you cannot believe you've never heard this before, you want to share it with a friend or a relative or a coworker, you do not have to wait the 1 to 2 business days to do that. You can always head over to our YouTube channel. I'll be sharing the links for all of this with you in the chat in just a little bit, but you can head over to our YouTube channel and the video will usually be posted there within about 5 to 15 minutes of the end of today's live stream. Now, if you are curious for more Power to Fly content, or you are just, itching to know what else we can do for you, what other resources we can provide, no stress. You can head over to any of our social media accounts. We are at Power to Fly on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. And we would love to see you there. So please feel free to follow us, subscribe. We share amazing content, job listings, interviews with the recruiters, all kinds of great stuff. And also, obviously, the thing that we want to do the most is grow our community. We want these resources in the hands of as many people as possible. And obviously they're free. So we want to do everything we can to get them, kind of get them out there and, widen our community. So if you would like, as we're going along today, please feel free to take photos, video. Please feel free to let your social media network know that you are learning with Power to Fly. We would love to retweet, repost, reshare anything that you throw up there. Please feel free to tag us. You can also use our hashtag, which is hashtag Power to Fly. And we would love to see you. So enjoy all of those options. If you got questions, you can always send them into the group chat. I'll be in there monitoring stuff, but we hope to hear from you today. Now, I'm very excited to introduce you to today's speaker. Now, Maya Grossman, or I should say Anina Maya Grossman, is a peak performance career coach as well as a best-selling author. Now, in 2009, Maya was frustrated with a lack of progress in her own career, and so she chose to become the CEO of her career. She took control and started designing the career of her dreams, and once she made that change, she earned promotions 10 times in 15 years, grew from an IC or individual contributor to a VP, increased her salary with each move, and got to work for some of the best companies in the world like Microsoft and Google. Now, after 15 years in the corporate world, Maya made it her mission to help other ambitious professionals build the career of their dreams by teaching the methodologies that she developed over the years. Now, Maya, I am incredibly excited to get to talk with you today. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with our audience before we dive into questions?
No, I think you pretty much covered it.
All right, excellent. Okay, so let me go over here. The last thing I'm going to share with y'all before we dive into questions, these are some of the main takeaways you can expect to get from today's session. Now, like I said, if you have questions, we want to make sure that you are free to ask them. So please understand you are always welcome to ask questions. We want to make sure that you understand that you have the power to drive today's conversation. So we're going to try and focus on these three areas. But if you have questions and you want to, maybe you want to dive in deeper on a terminology or, an area that Maya mentions, maybe you have a question and you're not sure if we're going to get to it or not, send it in the group chat. If you submitted a question and you're not sure, or maybe we're going over your question, but there's some more detail or more context you'd like to give us, please feel free, y'all, share it into the group chat, or you can always DM me directly. I'm really happy to do this for you, and just understand that you all get to decide what you get out of today. So if you have questions, ask them. I want to make sure we get you answers, but I don't know what you want to know until you tell us. So some of the things we're going to discuss today are what's really holding you back in your career. We're going to talk about the power of becoming the CEO of your career, what that actually means for you. And Maya's then going to talk about the 3-step formula for career success. Now, to get us kicked off here, we had a lot of really awesome questions. And a lot of people had written in saying that they were trying to do a couple things at the same time. So let me stop sharing my screen here and we'll highlight our fabulous speaker. There we go. So the first person had asked, they'd said, I have 2 different jobs and I'm studying at university at the same time. I'd like to know if this is something that could be holding me back in my career. And I think this is a really interesting question, right? Because sometimes the things that might be holding us back might not really be the things we have any choice over, right? Nobody here lives on water and sunshine, so we all got to have jobs so we can eat and have a place to live. But what would you say to this person? Do you think that something like school and 2 jobs could be part of what's holding you back?
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, kudos to you for actually doing that. 2 jobs and studying, that's incredible. And it's actually something that I went through something similar in my career. So I graduated from high school and I couldn't really afford to go to college. So I had to work. And I took the first job that came along, and it was a nice job. And that's how I kind of got stuck, because I was working full time as a travel agent. Never really had any intentions to become a travel agent, but it was a really nice job. And I actually started doing my bachelor's while working for that company. And here's what my day looked like. I would open up the office at 7 a.m., work till 3 or 4, and then go and take night classes, because that's the only way I was able to actually learn. Now, the problem was it was not sustainable. So about a year or a year and a half into that crazy schedule, I was driving to a class and I fell asleep while driving. And it was just a split second, but it was terrifying. And that was my wake-up call. That was when I realized you can't do everything. You need to make choices. Now, if your education is going to be important for the rest of your career, no problem. Then figure out how to complete your education. You're not running a sprint. This is a marathon to build your career. And we each have our own timeline. So maybe you're not ready to get started on the career progression right now because you still need to sustain yourself, and get yourself through school. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it as long as you're doing it for the right goals. So I would say just get a little bit more realistic in terms of expectations. It's okay to take your time to finish your education, because that will actually help you propel your career and grow even faster when you're done. And if there's any way for you to do some work that will actually give you experience, that's incredible. But if not, that's still fine.
I'm loving this advice, and you're right. I'm seeing some comments in the chat here. that said, where did that go? Mary had said, right, falling into jobs with no intentions except to survive. And I feel like a lot of us have done this at some point in our career. So it's really, I think, important to talk about these things, because it can very much feel like, if you're caught up in that survival mechanism, that there these kinds of things don't even cross your mind, right? It never even occurs
Yeah.
to you to be thinking in terms of planning long term, because everything's right here. You need to cover what's really pressing at the time. So I think that's great advice, and it does also help with a lot of people's kind of impulse, if they don't know what they're doing in their career, is to go back to school, right? And I have a ton of, geez, I have one friend who has multiple master's degrees, because it's what she does. And she is smart as all get out, but dang, that's a lot, right? And it might not really be something that's necessary for you to do. And that's extra stress that you don't need, right?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think there's this misconception that the only way to be successful is if you were born with a unique talent, or you have an MBA or some sort of degree, or you have a pedigree or a massive network. And don't get me wrong, all of these can help, but you don't actually need that. The only thing you really need to grow your career is to be in control, is to realize that it's up to you, that you don't need to wait for anyone else. You don't have to get permission from a company or a manager. You can actually design the career that you want. The problem is, most of us have been taught, do your job, work hard, keep your head down, and wait for your turn. It will come. But it usually doesn't, because it's just not how it works anymore. You're essentially outsourcing your success. You're letting someone else, someone who is basically a stranger, right?
Yeah.
That someone who doesn't care about your career as much as you do, you're letting them make decisions for you, and you don't have to. There's actually a different way to approach it. And that is kind of what happened to me. I was stuck at that job for 7 years. Now, look, it was a really nice company and they were nice people, but I had absolutely no desire to be a travel agent. But I got stuck. I started, and there was no real reason for me to leave, except I was kind of doing the same thing, right? Early on, I worked really hard, I got noticed, and I was able to kind of level up a little bit. But then for the next 4 or 5 years, nothing happened. And I was really stuck, even though I worked really, really hard. Because it wasn't about working more hours. It was about me realizing that, one, it wasn't the right place for me, but even if I wanted to stay, I had to start qualifying myself for the next level to actually get there. Because doing more of your job is not going to get you to the next level.
I think that's a really powerful statement, and something that I feel like a lot of us were never told, even if it was, kind of implied, right? My dad worked for one company for 25 years. My mom did the same. These long terms and long tenures at jobs just aren't the norm anymore, right? It's just not something that most people have come to expect. Let's talk about what a clear career destination looks like. How can we define that for ourselves? When you're talking about a career destination, what are you picturing?
Okay, well, let's take a tiny step back and explain why we actually need it. So, when I teach people how to start building their own career, there are 3 things that they're gonna need. They're gonna need a clear strategy, they're gonna need an empowering mindset, and an operating system. And if you look very closely, the acronym is CEO. Why? Because it's a reminder that you are in control of your career. You're the CEO. So you need those 3 things. And the career destination comes into the first step, which is building a strategy. And you need to know what you're trying to achieve, because how will you get there if you don't know where you're going, right? Think about it this way. When you want to go watch a movie, and if you're like me and you don't like driving, you use your Uber app, you have to put a specific destination. Otherwise, no one will pick you up. And it's kind of the same with your career. And for the most part, when I ask people what they want, I get answers like, oh, I want to be in marketing, or, one day I want to be an executive. And that's a great start, but you really need to get specific, right? Marketing has 27,000 disciplines. Which one are you interested in? right? There are different types of executives. You need to get really specific. So a clear career destination includes your title. So what is the discipline that you want to be in, the level of seniority, and whenever possible, the type of company you want to work for. And that can mean a big corporation or a small startup. That can mean B2B versus B2C product. And lastly, if you can actually narrow down into a specific industry, that would actually help you qualify yourself faster, because the more specific you are, the better the chances are that you're going to position yourself for that role, because you're going to get really specific with the details and the skills that you're going to learn. Because when it comes to different roles, even between a company the size of Microsoft and a small startup, a marketing role would look very different, and it will require different skills and different experiences. And you don't want to waste your time trying to learn something that you'll never use. You want to focus on the things that will actually move the needle.
Very, very important. You're right. There's a lot of things that people get kind of wrapped up in that feel very important, but might not really be helping to get you where you want to go.
Yeah,
Um,
and I actually have a really good tip for people on how to figure this out. Because you usually can't Google the important stuff, right? You can look at the job description, but job descriptions are basically wish lists, so I wouldn't like it's a good place to start. But if you really want to know what a role requires, go talk to people who have the job you want to have. That's it. It is free, it is very easy to do, and it will give you all of the insights you need, because you're going to learn, one, what the day-to-day looks like. You want to make sure that your dream job is actually your dream job. I got swept up in the hype once in my career, and I applied for a role because it was like the most exciting thing in, marketing at the time. And 6 months into the role, I realized I hate it. It's just not what I want to do with my career. So you want to avoid that. And if you talk to people who have the job you want to have, they can tell you, this is the good, the bad, the ugly, this is what my day looks like. These people also just stepped into this role, so they can teach you what it takes. They can tell you about their journey. They can share some of the unknown unknowns. What are the skills, the experiences? What are the people that can help you get there? And all it takes is a 30-minute conversation. And the reason why most people don't do this, because I share this all the time, and 97% of people never follow through because they feel scared to reach out to strangers on the internet. But we live in a time where that's basically networking. Like, it's so hard to meet people in real life now, so people actually expect it. And let me tell you a secret. Most people really like talking about themselves. So if you reach out and you compliment someone about their journey and you just ask for a little bit of time to learn from them, I am willing to bet 7 out of 10 people will say yes, and you'll have the information that you need.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, truly, it's one of those things that, asking for help, especially when you have a specific ask, right? If you're not just emailing or messaging somebody saying like, can I pick your brain? Can I have 5 minutes for coffee? Having that specific ask of like, I want to know about your day. I'm interested in your job. Can you talk to me about your job? It's huge. And especially if you make it clear that like, you're not trying to get hired, you're
Yes.
just trying to get information. That makes it a lot easier for people to talk to you, right? Because like if I get people that message me, curious about careers with Power to Fly, and I'm happy to talk to you and tell you what my experience is, but I'm not part of hiring. So do you think that it's worth it to like try and dial down and specify, like, I'm not looking for a job right now, I'm just curious about what you're doing?
Yeah, of course. And by the way, I do have a free workshop on my website, and we'll share the link where I even give you the templates, like what to write in LinkedIn when you want to have this conversation. But yeah, you want to make it very easy for people to say yes. So you need to be personal, meaning you need to make it look like you are specifically interested in them. You're not just copy pasting a message. And the way to do that is just to research that person a little bit. Maybe listen to something that they recorded. Maybe look at a post that they shared. Just have some personal reference of why they're interesting. And then tell them exactly what you want. I am working on leveling up into this specific role, and I found your journey really inspiring. Would it be possible to jump on a call so I can learn how to do X, Y, Z? So And you can tell them it's a 30 minutes call, so it's very clear you're not going to take, too much out of their day. And if you can, even give them a link to schedule so it will be convenient to them and you don't have to go back and forth. And I find that when you do that, it is just so easy for people to say yes that very often they do.
There we go. Sorry, I lost my mute button, and we've got workers going on next door at my neighbor's house, so I'll be going on and off mute. But yeah, I think that's a really good point to make. We've got people chiming in the chat about different ways that they do that outreach. I also threw the link to Maya's website into the group chat there. So if you are interested, obviously we'll be sharing some more information about that course. But if you are curious and want to look around a little bit, there's the link for that. Okay, so let's talk about the perfect job, right? This person had written in saying that they think they're being held back by continuously searching for the perfect job, as opposed to one that's going to advance their knowledge or their pay or their happiness. Two questions here. First off, do you think that this is just a form of procrastination?
It is very possible, but I think it's actually more of a case of having too many options and needing to dial it down. So I
Okay.
think what you optimize for at a job is going to change. I don't think there's one right answer. And I think throughout our lives, it changes. When I was in school, I took the job that paid the most and was the easiest for me to actually, play with the hours so I can go to school. But the more I leveled up, I cared about salary, I cared about titles, I wanted to learn more. And, at some point it was about the company that I work for. So at different times, you'll optimize for different things. I think it's just really hard to choose because I don't think it's very rare that you can have everything. And sometimes you'll need to compromise. So you need to really figure out what's important to you and what's a red line. Because
Okay.
you don't also have to compromise about everything.
Yeah. All right. So if you don't let's say that this is maybe in the realm of procrastination, what barriers do you think that we should be looking to remove in our lives? Or, how do we figure out if we just need to settle?
Okay, procrastination is massive. It's why part number 3 of the success formula is operating system. Because you can have the best strategy in the world. You may even have the confidence to try and achieve it, but most people are just struggling to get started and to stay consistent because everything else is more attractive, because things get a little bit hard or a little bit boring, and they just don't have the motivation to actually try. So procrastination is a huge factor. I think you just need to get really real with yourself. Step number 1, what is your career destination? Because that will have an impact on where you work. Step number 2, what is important to you? What are you actually optimizing for? What are you willing to compromise? What are you not willing to compromise? For example, for me, culture is not something that I compromise for. I can have the best offer in the world. I actually refused an offer before because I just did not click with the team and I did not think that I was going to fit in culturally. They gave me exactly what I asked for and then some, but at that point I wasn't optimizing for salary. I just wanted to have a really nurturing environment. So just get really clear on what you're willing to compromise and what you're not. And do everything that you can to apply for roles or build relationships with companies and employers who will give you the majority of your asks. Maybe you don't have to compromise. Maybe you can have it all. I've had jobs where I ticked all the boxes, but it's not always the case. So I genuinely think it's about doing work with yourself and being honest about what you're willing to compromise on and what you're not, and sticking to it. Because when you get the offer, it's going to be very tempting to say yes, but I promise you, 6 months into the role, you're going to regret it. So make sure that you stick to your own boundaries and maybe say no to something good to get something great.
Yeah, I think that's very important. All right, let's kind of switch gears here and talk about how becoming that CEO of our own career can help us achieve this success. Because I feel like there's a lot of times where I have felt, like you talked about at the beginning, kind of that like the the advancement or the success of my career was largely dependent on my boss and how much, what my boss thought of what I was doing. So what do you think is it, what do you think it, what do you think is it about the CEO, kind of mindset that would allow us to achieve success in our careers?
Yeah, well, first and foremost, your manager can still play an important role, but they shouldn't be the ones making decisions for you. So, being the CEO of your career means that you actually decide what you want to do, what's your timeline, how quickly you want to do it, and you can work with your manager to figure out what it looks like. So, when I teach people how to get promoted, one of the first things that they need to do is to speak to their manager and have that growth conversation and explain that I'm interested in growing. I want to have a bigger impact. I want to influence the company. I want to stay here for the long term, so I want to see a future. What are three things that I need to do? What are three goals that I need to achieve that will actually qualify me for this role? You need to get specific about what success looks like. Now, if you wait for your manager to initiate a conversation and tell you, you know what, I think you're amazing. I think you need to level up. I'm going to give you everything that you need to do to level up. You will be waiting forever. I have worked for amazing managers, really great people, but it's usually just not something that they proactively work on. If you approach them, if you come with the direction and the idea, they will support you. But it's very rare to see a really structured career growth plan coming from your company or from your manager. So when you're proactive, when you start the conversation and when you initiate the process, that's how you actually get the leverage.
I like that. I like the idea of, kind of not necessarily controlling the narrative, but like really bringing home the fact that people don't know what you want if you don't tell them. And while ideally, yeah, every manager out there would be working to develop the talents of the people that they manage, that's not that it's not always the case. It is not always the case, but that's not to say that there is always enough attention to go around. And so you're the only one that knows what you actually want. So tell them, it might be that you have great ideas, but they are like, oh, but I saw you going blah, 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 blah. And here's why. It might be that they can help you. It might be that they have a better option or something new for you to explore. I love that.
Yeah. Let me give you a great example. Earlier in my career, I had a wonderful employee, and she was the only person doing customer success. And she was with me for about 6 or 8 months at the time, high achiever, great talent, and she really wanted to level up and become a manager. But at the time, one, I didn't know, so she had to tell me, and she did tell me. We had this conversation, but at the time, I didn't have the headcount. I couldn't actually afford to hire someone full time. But because I knew what she was trying to achieve, I created opportunities for her. For example, I moved all of the vendor relationships to her. So she was now responsible to managing all of the external vendors that we were using. Not exactly like having a direct report, but still required her to learn new skills. A couple of months later, an intern reached out to us and asked if we are opening any internships. Now, at the time, we were not, but I just seized the opportunity and said, yes, I want to have an intern reporting to this person. So for 6 months, she had an intern. It was part-time, but she was able to gain a little bit of experience. And that intern did such a great job that we ended up hiring them. So just because she discussed her career growth with me, I was able to help her do that. And I've had managers do that for me. So you really have to be open about what you're trying to achieve, because your manager is going to be privy to so many opportunities you're not aware of, and they can really go to bat for you. So
Yeah.
I think having that conversation is really important, but for some reason, people are really afraid that their manager would think that they're after their job, or that they'll be intimidated from someone who wants to grow so quickly. So I have two things to say about that. If that's really the case, if your manager is holding you back because they're jealous, leave. Seriously.
Yeah, that's not good managing.
No, it's not a problem with you, it's a problem with them, and you don't need to compromise. You can either move laterally. I've had people who worked with me who just moved inside the company and were able to thrive with a much better manager, or you can kind of use your time with the company to start building the skills for the next level, but go and level up externally, right? Go and work for someone else when you're ready, because you shouldn't get stuck because your manager is intimidated by you.
Yes, very good point. This actually raises a really good question. I got a DM here asking, how do you know if you won't be able to grow at a company? So we talked about, like, a manager that is going to be jealous or intimidated or feel like challenged or something by your interest in leveling up your own career is obviously a very big red flag. Are there any other red flags that people can look out for when you're assessing company culture or trying to get an idea? Maybe you're like moving to another team within your same org.
Yeah, it's not always easy to see it, especially when you're just interviewing, but there are a couple of things you can do to try and find red flags. So first and foremost, you're going to have to click with the hiring manager. The one time I did not click with the hiring manager, but I went for the job anyway, it was a mess.
Yeah.
And you want to have that personal relationship. I don't necessarily believe in completely separating work and life. You still want to enjoy your time. So you need to have some level of friendship. So that's step number one. If there's completely like no click, you really think differently, it was an awkward conversation, I would rethink moving forward. Step number two, talk to team members, other people who report to that manager, and see if you can get a little bit more information from them. Ask them about their journey. Have they been able to level up? How long have they been with the company? And if possible, and this requires a little bit more effort, go and speak to previous employees, not people who are still working there, because they kind of have to be, careful about what they say. Try and find someone who left maybe, and see if you can get a little bit more feedback. I would also say make sure that you spend enough time with the hiring manager. I know there's a lot of emphasis right now on hiring quickly, but the hiring process is not just for them, it's for you. You need to make sure that you're stepping into the right place, because we spend 90,000 hours at work. The only other thing we spend so much time on is sleep. I once did the math that I spent more time with my manager than I did with my own family. Okay, so it's really important to make sure that you know who you're working with. So ask for another 30 minutes, invite them for coffee, just get a little bit more time to make sure that you're making the right choice. And lastly, if possible, talk to HR, or during the interview, ask your manager, how do you approach career growth? What can I expect, if I'm going to work here? And you're going to find out really quickly, because the people who don't care or the people who don't have a plan will mumble and say, yeah, don't worry, we'll figure it out. And
we promote from within and we'll develop you. Yeah.
You want to make sure that they have a process, that there's a plan, that there are KPIs around it. So you can just be a little bit more proactive with the questions you ask, so that you can get a feel of whether or not progression is important for that company.
I like it. That's a good thing to ask. We did get a follow-up in the chat here asking, when you're talking about hiring managers, is that the same thing as the recruiter, or do you consider them to be two separate like people or groups that people should look out for or seek out?
Yeah, definitely separate, because recruiter is someone who's going to be involved in the interview process, but you're probably not going to see them again. You're going to spend most of your time with your hiring manager. So that's where I would spend most of my time, and try to make sure that I actually click with them, and I'll try to do my due diligence and make sure that the people who work for them actually like working for them, because that's a good indication that they actually care.
Yeah. And thank you for to the person that asked that question, because as I was listening to rethinking what we've been talking about for the last couple sentences, it makes a ton of sense. We're talking about the manager who would be supervising you, who would be hiring you to join their team. We're not talking about the manager of all hiring. So just to clarify that for y'all. Let's see. All right. Let's talk about some of the skills that you need to become the CEO of your career. Are there like kind of baseline skills that everybody needs? Are there things that, should these be things that we already have? Let's kind of dial in on the skill aspect.
Yeah, well, it actually starts with your mindset and your beliefs. Because what I see very often is that most people don't think they can be the CEO of their career. They literally don't believe that they can actually create their own career. So in order to change that, you need to have two very strong convictions or beliefs. The first one is you need to have a growth mindset. You need to believe that you're capable of learning and growing, that who you are right now is not the end product, and your potential of growth is limitless. I genuinely believe that to be true, but you need to believe it. The second belief is you need to have an internal locus of control. And what that means is that you take responsibility for the things that happen in your life. You don't shift blame. You don't think the world is out to get you. You believe that you actually control the events in your life, whether you control how they happen or how you react. Because if you don't think you're capable of change, then it's not going to matter what I teach you. You're not going to be able to apply it. So a growth mindset, internal locus of control. And when you bundle them together, this is how you create the success mindset. Because when you have those beliefs, it is clear to you that you are capable of creating your own career journey. And all you need is the tactics. Okay, now how do I actually do this? And this is where the success formula comes in, the clear destination, the empowering mindset, and lastly, the operating system.
I like that. The operating system thing is mind blowing to me, honestly. Like really, really, really love that idea. Okay, let's talk about why people don't do this. What do you think is the main reason why people do not take this ownership of their career, why they don't step up to the plate to be that CEO of themselves?
Yeah, it's probably a combination of two things. First, it's not what we were taught to do, right? We've all been following really bad advice. 7 years of my career, I kept my head down, I worked hard, and I waited for someone to give me what I wanted because this is what I have been taught to do. My dad was in the military. I was told, you follow the rules, you get what you want. Your first 20 years, think about it. You follow the rules, what your parents tell you, you do as you're told, and then you're a good boy. And when you go to school, you follow the rules, you know what to do to get an A, and then you get the reward. But when you get to the workplace, that's not how it works. You're not supposed to just wait and hope that you'll get something, because once again, you're outsourcing your entire future, your entire career, and it just doesn't make sense because, unfortunately, no one will ever care about your career as much as you do. So you really have to be in control. So I think it's kind of breaking that paradigm that you actually need permission from someone else. And usually when I teach this, people tell me, yeah, but a company needs to give you a promotion or your manager needs to sign off on a promotion. That is absolutely true. But one, you also need to convince them that you deserve it, and that's up to you. And two, if someone stands in your way, you can move. You're not a tree. If something is not working for you, if you're not happy, you have the choice of going somewhere else, which means, again, everything is in your control and you're able to do it. So I think the first thing is the mindset, but two, fear. Okay? It's scary. It's scary to go for
It's
something
scary
new.
asking for what you want.
I
It's
know.
terrifying. What if they say no?
It's a tough conversation. And look, the first time I had to have a tough conversation was actually around negotiating a salary. And I was terrified. I'm like, I'm just gonna be good at my job and I'm gonna get paid and whatever they give me is gonna be fine. But I was very lucky that my boyfriend, who is now my husband, told me that I should really ask for what I'm worth, not what they're giving, what I believe that I'm worth. And it was a really interesting coincidence because I applied for this role and it was open for a really long time. It was open for almost 6 months. And everything happened so quickly. They invited me for an interview and a second interview, and everything felt so good. It was so funny. I didn't even make it back home, and they called me to say they want to make an offer. And usually I wouldn't really think about it, but then my husband said, that means you have to ask for more because they want you. This is an indication that you have what it takes. They want to hire you. The worst thing that can happen is that they'll say no and you'll compromise on what you're ready to compromise on right now.
That's a very
So
good point.
I know, but it was so hard. Like my
Oh, it's
hands were
always hard.
shaking.
Come on. Oh, yeah. It's always a lot easier to be like, oh, that was a very good point. You should do that when I'm not the one that has to do that.
I know. But I did it anyway, even though it was scary.
Mhm.
And I got what I wanted. And when that happened, when I realized that I had the power to do that, that's when everything changed. Because then, while I was still scared of the conversations, I really understood the upside. And I
Yeah.
knew that it was possible. It wasn't guaranteed, but it was
Yeah.
possible. So from that point on, I negotiated everything and I had really tough conversations. And for the most part, I got what I wanted. And not because I'm the best negotiator in the world, but because I actually asked for what I wanted.
Yeah. Oof, very, very powerful. We got people in the chat saying, Mary says, I needed to understand that I have to care about myself the most, or that need of caring for self is not selfish. Kimberlyn said, I've learned to do what's best for you because they will always do what's best for them. And I think, that is a really powerful statement. It is something that you have to prioritize yourself, not necessarily in that adversarial way that I feel like a lot of us, kind of a lot of us qualify or classify that kind of I have to do what's good for me, or I need to do what's best for me. It's really easy to feel like you're being selfish, but no one else is looking out for you. Like, not
No,
in a shitty way, just in a like, you are the one that cares the most about your career. You care about your friends' careers. You want them to do great, but you're not like sitting up night thinking like, well, man, if Maureen really just wanted to level up, she should take that role at that course and blah, blah, blah. Like, they're not sitting up at night thinking about what you should do for your career. So it's
yeah,
not necessarily a selfish thing or an antagonistic thing. It's just, people are not anti you. They're just pro themselves.
exactly. And you deserve to have a career in life that you love. You don't have to hate your job. I enjoyed my 9 to 5 and I help so many people do the same. You're not confined to what you have right now. If something is not great, if you don't feel like this is the best opportunity, if you're not excited, then you need to make a change because there's absolutely no reason for you to hate those 90,000 hours and spend
Mm-hmm.
all of your week waiting for your weekend. It's not that your life is not important, but very often when your career is great, so is your life. And, you shouldn't have to spend so much time hating your boss, hating what you do, because there's always an option.
I love this. And then the other thing I do want to tack on before we jump to our next question, what you had said about, like knowing what you're worth, asking for what you're worth, know what you're worth and add tax.
Yeah,
Round up truly, because
always,
like you
always.
will you will honestly be shocked like how much if you just round up an extra like whatever 500 bucks 1,000 whatever, if you will be surprised at how often when you round that up people do not bat an eye.
Of course not. The best way to know that you're undershooting is when they say yes immediately. So
Yep.
if you ask for something and the answer was an immediate yes, you could have asked for a lot more. I learned that the hard way, and then I started adding the tax because there's an expectation that you'll negotiate, and they're willing to meet you in the middle, so you can ask for a little bit more. And I say that at a hiring manager. I made the best offer that I could make to a candidate, but if they were my top choice, there was always room for negotiations.
Yeah. Okay. All right, let's talk about you started to lightly touch on this about what being the CEO of your career can involve when it comes to your professional and your personal life. I think you made a really good point, which is that we spend a ton of time with the people we work with, more frequently, more than we spend with our families or with our friends. So when it comes to trying to become the CEO of your own career, do you feel like it has to be a trade-off? Do you feel like it has to be like either you're kicking butt in one area or in the other, but not the both at once?
Not necessarily. I think part of this process is to focus on what you want. So you spend the majority of your time on achieving those goals, and you're not kind of wasting your time on things that won't actually matter to you. And it's actually part of how you achieve your goals. Because let's say you have a clear destination, you talked to 10 people, they told you what it takes, you outlined everything that you're going to have to learn and do. Well, now you actually have to do it. And in order to do that, you're going to have to prioritize because there are only a limited amount of hours every day, and you do have a family and a life. So you really need to get strategic about it. And this is where the operating system comes in. How do you decide what to do first? How do you decide what's more important? And how do you allocate time so that you consistently do a little bit, but it doesn't take over your life? And you can still actually continue to do your work on the day-to-day because you still need to do your work well, but you create opportunities to learn and do more. And one thing I can say on how to do that is to take a lot of the bigger tasks or the bigger goals and break them down into tiny, tiny action items. When I say tiny, this is something that you can probably complete in 30 minutes to an hour. And let me give you a super specific example. At some point, one of my goals was to gain more public speaking experience. I thought it was going to be important for me as an executive, and I was always really scared about standing in front of people and speaking. But that was such a big goal, and it was so intimidating that I just ignored it for a really long time. And then I realized what I need to do. So I broke it down to tiny action items. For example, step number 1, I need to decide what I can talk about. Okay, that's doable. Step number 2, I need to map out a couple of events where I may apply to be a speaker. Step number 3, I need to create an email that I can send to pitch myself. But each one of those tasks was so easy to complete that I could just kind of do it throughout the week. I could plug it into my calendar. It's 30 minutes and I was able to do it. And it wasn't scary. It didn't cause me to procrastinate. But by doing a little bit and a little bit and a little bit, eventually after a month or so, I actually accomplished a goal. I actually booked an event. So sometimes it's just about being more strategic and planned and making sure that you're consistently working on your goals.
I like that. I like the idea of trying to maintain that consistency, which can be super, super difficult, and I love how you touched on the fact that like we do kind of have to do that own work in our own minds, right? We have to realize that it's not necessarily an either or. I remember, so stupid that this stuck with me, but I remember watching Devil Wears Prada in I think high school, and remembering Stanley Tucci saying that if your love life or your personal life, if one of them's about to explode, then you probably deserve a promotion in the other. And it was just one of those things that hit me where I was like, well, that's kind of shitty. Like, I don't like that. Why would I want, that doesn't make a ton of sense. And it's not just like workaholics that believe this, right? It was very, very much part of the culture. So I think it is very important to remember that sometimes the work you're having to do is internal. Sometimes the work you're having to do is reframing things in your own mind and realizing what really matters to you, and kind of putting your effort there.
Yeah.
All right.
I do want to get
real.
I do want to get realistic though and say there are usually sacrifices that comes with prioritizing your career. It doesn't mean you have to give up on everything. You get to decide what your boundaries are. What are you willing to give up and what not? It just means that your timeline will be a little bit different. I've had times in my life where, I didn't have a family of my own. I didn't have to take care of other people. So it was a lot easier for me to spend time. And, there were times where, I decided I am not going to do anything during the weekend, literally nothing. This is just fun time. This is me time. So I had to figure out how to kind of squeeze learning and career into the week. So you just need to get really real with yourself about what you're willing to sacrifice. But it's usually not either or. It's kind of a balance. This is why I don't like the term work-life balance, because I think it's more of a synergy, right? Sometimes you need to spend a little more time on your career. Sometimes you want more time with your family, and it kind of ebbs and flows. And I also think it's incredible to have a great career because that will empower you and give you great energy to enjoy more in your life and vice versa. So that's why I kind of don't like to separate them, but I know it's not the most popular opinion.
No, I think, it reminds me of something I had heard a couple of years ago, which was, everybody's juggling, right? And some people are juggling 2 balls, some people are juggling 12, but the key is to know which are glass and which are plastic, right? Yeah. Know what is droppable, even if it's not perfect, even if it's not what you prefer to do, but some stuff can be dropped and picked back up, and maybe it's a little scuffed, but it'll be all right. And other times this cannot drop because it will shatter. And that is
Yep.
a giant mess that has to get cleaned up, and all the rest of the juggling like comes to a halt. It is one of those things that if you are, and it comes with time, absolutely, you're going to make mistakes as you're picking these things, but trying to think about it in those terms, you'll realize that there are some things that can be done differently. There are some things that can be put on the back burner, and sometimes it's career stuff and sometimes it's personal stuff, but if like, let's say your kids are those are a glass ball for you, great, excellent way to know that, because then you can make better assessments for what you need to jettison if you are overwhelmed.
Yeah, and I
um
like creative solutions, right? So for example, I used to spend a lot of time cooking and I actually hate cooking, but I
oh,
wanted to
same.
make sure that we eat healthy and, not junk food. But at some point I asked myself, I'm spending more than an hour every single day. That's a lot. What is the alternative? And the alternative doesn't have to be eat junk food or eat out. So I figured out that I can actually buy prepared meals. And I know it sounds so stupid, but you know, finding that very easy solution means that I get to spend more time with my family, or if right now I'm working on leveling up, I can spend more time on my career and we can still eat really healthy. So sometimes it's just about changing your perspective and going back and asking yourself, what is the source problem, right?
Yeah.
Not what do I need to give up, but is there a different way to solve this problem?
Yeah. Can you throw money at the problem? Can you do a trade-off of like, I'll do this and you do that? I very much appreciate and really kind of prefer getting creative with stuff like that. Because you do, especially for me, kind of putting those pieces together, I realize if something is honestly more important to me than I thought it was. And so like, for me, at least, that introspection comes kind of hard. So it is really helpful to me when I kind of get that, at least a little bit stronger of a signal of like, no, I don't actually think this is third most important because I keep trying to do it first. So like, what's going on here? Okay, let's say, totally hypothetically, people are moving along in their career, everything seems to be going great, but now they're worried that they might not have accelerated fast enough. What do you think is the playbook? What do people need to know if they are trying to accelerate that career progression for themselves?
Well, first and foremost, there's no such thing as fast enough because we have a different pace, right? Everyone's journey is going to be different. I started college 4 years after everyone else because I had to work to actually put myself through college, which means I started working late. I started everything late. I didn't write my book until I was 38. Does that mean I'm too late to the game? There's no real timeline. So, step number one, don't even think about it. The question is, are you moving fast enough for you? Are you happy with the pace? Are you learning enough? Are you enjoying? And if the answer is no, then you can ask yourself, why am I not moving fast enough? Am I doing what I should be doing to grow my career, meaning taking action, working on it consistently, creating opportunities? And if the answer to all of that is yes, then DM me and I'll help you figure out what's stopping you.
Yes. And you know what? This really reminds me, I was having a conversation with one of my friends a couple weekends ago, and he had done the same thing. He finished college and he actually went and worked for like 2 or 3 years teaching English to school kids in South Korea. And it was amazing and whatever. But like, he talks about a lot about feeling like he's kind of behind, like he didn't develop the friend group that we all have, or, stuff like that. So just keep in mind, y'all, like, everybody thinks that they're behind. I've never met a single person that was like, oh no, I'm crushing the game. This is good. I'm like 5 years ahead of my 15-year plan. This is fabulous. No one does. So I think it's really worth remembering. And plus, something that I told my friend last week, and I think it's worth repeating, doing something later than the rest of your peers or the people in your friend group just means that you have people you can ask when shit goes sideways, when it feels really weird, or you think you made a mistake or whatever. You have people you can ask. Like, a bunch of our friends bought houses before my husband and I did, and we were like sad and in our apartments, whatever. But guess what? We now have people to call and say, hey, who worked on your roof? Hey, my kitchen's under an inch of water. What the hell do I do? Like, doing things later is not bad. It's not a bad thing. You just have to like, ask your friends. Your friends love you. They want to help. Like, ask them how they're doing these things.
No, I completely agree. And very often, doing things at your own pace, or sometimes even taking a step back. I literally restarted my career at 28, okay? I spent
Mm.
7 years at the travel agency, and then I decided I want to go into marketing. And I had zero marketing experience. So I literally had to take an entry level job at the age of 28. But because I spent 7 years working for a big company, I learned how politics work. I learned how the business works. I had work ethics. I moved really quickly. I got the marketing job, and within 4 years, I was the most senior person at that company, reporting to the CEO. So it's there, again, there's no real timeline. It really depends on what you want to achieve and what you feel comfortable with.
Yeah, very, very good point. Okay, we have 4 minutes left. I want to make sure we save a little bit of time for, thank yous, goodbyes, all that kind of stuff. Is there a question that you wanted to make sure we got to? We've got one about the formula for career success, factors to career success, how to level up your career growth. Oh, let's do this one. How can I create my own opportunities and turn them into promotions?
Okay, that's definitely more than 2 minutes, but
It always is.
But in general, to create your own opportunities, you need to be aware of what you're looking for. And what I teach people to do, and it's actually also in my book, is a process called opportunity digging. And it's actually very simple. You spend time every month to look at your goals, so you need to have goals, and you just ask yourself, how can I achieve this goal? What changed? Did people join the company? Maybe people left. Are there any open roles? Did the economy change? Did the industry change? Is there anything new happening in my discipline? You have a list of questions that you go through to just kind of get your mind to focus on, how can I solve this problem? How can I achieve this opportunity? Because very often what happens is you have this idea in your head, and then you kind of go along with your day-to-day and you forget about it. But if every couple of weeks you ask yourself again and again, you suddenly start to see opportunities. And it actually has to do with our brains, because what you focus on, your brain will show you. And it's not like a magic trick, but think about it this way. When you want to buy a car, very often every other car on the street is suddenly the car that you're looking for. And
every time.
It's actually a psychological effect, because here's what happens. Our brains can capture a lot of information, but we can't process it. So very often our brains does all of the processing in the back office. So we are not even aware of it. But when we think about something, when we focus on it, when we maybe, have a mantra, when we read our own goals, our brain realizes this is important. I need to surface information about this specific thing. And suddenly you start seeing it, and you start seeing it everywhere. So the more you think about what you want and actually ask yourself questions proactively, the more likely you are to suddenly see opportunities and then be able to seize them.
Yes, it reminds me of my grandmother telling me that you could hear anything you're listening for. And
Yep.
I'm sure she was talking about terms of gossip or something, but like truly, if you are looking out for these things, they suddenly seem to be everywhere. Even if what you're seeing is opportunities that other people are getting, it can still help you kind of, maybe noodle around and think like, oh, well, that if they got that opportunity this way, like maybe I could pitch for something similar and blah, blah, blah. Like loving all of this. All right, we are almost out of time. Maya, I just want to say a huge thank you. You are getting tons of love in the chat. People are absolutely so excited to rewatch this and send it out. Is there anything that you want to say to our audience before we leave today?
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, the most important thing to take from this call is you deserve to have the career and life that you want, and you're the person who can build it. You can build it, you can design it, you don't have to settle for what you have. And as long as you believe that, the how is the easy part. I can teach you, you can Google it, but just remember that you deserve it.
Love that. Absolutely love it. All right, this is going to kind of draw us to the end of our session today, but I just want to say a huge thank you to all of our attendees. Y'all are what makes these events so special, so interactive. I love seeing the questions that you all send in the chat and the advice, and and sharing that y'all were doing. It was just really great to see. So thank you all for coming in and bringing that great energy to this. In case you are not doing anything with, if you have a couple hours free this afternoon, I'm going to be hosting another chat at 3:00 Eastern called How to Land More Interviews Without a Resume. So if you're job hunting, that might be a really good one to check out. If you don't have the time, sign up anyway. You can find it on the Chat and Learn homepage. We will send you we'll email you the recording once it's over. So if you are job seeking and want more information or want some guidance there, absolutely join us there. All right, that's going to bring us to the end of time today. But I just want to say, if you are part of our frequent flyer program and we see you all the time, thank you so much for coming. It's always great to see familiar faces. If this was your first Power to Fly event, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope you enjoyed it. And I hope that we'll get to see you and all of our returners on another chat coming up soon. Night, everybody. Bye.